Good morning. My name's Charlie, and today we're going to be discussing healthcare in the United States. We're going to look at the healthcare market. The healthcare market is thought to have several problems, one of which is rising costs. The rising cost of healthcare threatens our economy. One of the reasons why the market for healthcare has this and other problems has to do with asymmetric information. Asymmetric information in economics is when one party to a transaction has more information than the other party to a transaction. For example, when a buyer has more information than a seller, or when a seller has more information than a buyer. Problems associated with asymmetric information can lead to market failure. Market failure is the inability of the market to maximize efficiency or to maximize economic well-being. There's asymmetric information in the market for healthcare, and this has led to market failure. In this topic, we're going to discuss two different kinds of asymmetric information, two different types. The one we're going to focus on in this particular lecture is going to be adverse selection. In the other lecture on this topic, we're going to be discussing moral hazard. Let me briefly describe both of them on this slide. Adverse selection is when one of the two parties in a transaction has more information at the time of the transaction, at the time of the agreement. Moral hazard is when one of the two parties has more information about the actions that they're going to take after the transaction has occurred and been agreed upon. So adverse selection occurs at the time of the transaction. Moral hazard occurs after the transaction. In both cases, one of the two parties in the agreement has more information than the other party. We're going to focus on adverse selection in the market for healthcare. As we move towards an explanation for why adverse selection is present in the market for healthcare, let me describe a little bit more about adverse selection using an example from the used car market. High quality used cars are for sale and low quality used cars are for sale. Sometimes we call low quality used cars lemons. It seems to be the case that if we offer an average price, then people who have a low quality car will be delighted to sell, and people who have a high quality car won't be willing to sell at an average price, at the average price that is being offered. As a result, if you offer an average price, you'll be able to buy lemons, but you won't be able to buy high quality used cars. This leads to the conclusion where the people who sell their cars are the people who have lemons, and the people who are not willing to sell their used cars are the people who have high quality used cars. This is an example of adverse selection. Lemons are the ones being sold, and it's the sellers who have more information about the quality of the car they're trying to sell than the buyer. Let me use some specific numbers in order to further illustrate this example. Let's suppose that the value of a high quality used car is $10,000, and let's suppose that 1/2 of all used cars for sale are high quality. And let's suppose that the value of a lemon is $5,000, and again, half of the used cars for sale are lemons, the other half are lemons. So the average price of a used car in this market, based on value, would be $7,500. That should be the average value of a used car in this market. That's taking these two values, 10,000 and 5,000, and averaging them. So if a buyer offers the average value of a used car in the market of $7,500, then the owners of lemons will be delighted to sell because they're getting $7,500 for something that's only worth $5,000, but the owners of high quality used cars will not want to sell because they don't want to sell something that's worth $10,000 for only $7,500. The result is that the buyers end up only buying lemons. This is adverse selection. The sellers have more information than the buyers. Let's relate this to healthcare now. insurance companies charge premiums for their health insurance. If a health insurance company charges an average premium, then they will attract only people who are relatively sick who expect to use more health care than the premium they're paying. And the people who are relatively healthy won't buy the insurance because at an average premium cost, they're not expecting to use that much health care. Let me use some numbers here to illustrate this. Let's suppose that relatively healthy people only expect to use $5,000 worth of health care over the course of a year. And let's suppose relatively sick people expect to use $10,000 in health care over the course of a year. If half of the people are healthy and half of the people are sick and they all buy insurance, then the average healthcare cost is going to be $7,500. Let's suppose that the health insurance company charges an average premium of $7,500. Then the relatively sick buyers will purchase the health insurance because it's only costing $7,500, but they expect to use $10,000 in health care, and the relatively healthy people will not buy the insurance. They're not willing to pay $7,500 in premiums for only $5,000 in expected health care costs. And so as a result, the health insurance company attracts a relatively sick clientele. The healthy people don't buy insurance and the sick people do buy insurance, and the health insurance company ends up losing money. This is an example of adverse selection. In this example, it's the buyer who has more information than the seller. The buyer knows more about whether they're likely to use a lot or a little bit of health care than the seller, who's the insurance company. So the insurance company attracts adversely a relatively unhealthy clientele. So let's talk about solutions to the problems of adverse selection. One solution is for a health insurance company to exclude pre-existing health conditions from its coverage. That means you buy insurance, pay the premiums, but problems you had with your health before you bought the insurance are not covered. Another approach in order to address problems associated with adverse selection would be to simply require everyone to buy health insurance. Then you don't attract an unhealthy group of clients. If everyone buys health insurance, then then average healthcare expenditures will be the average for the whole population because the whole population will have purchased health insurance. This is something very similar to what has been done in the automobile insurance industry. Everyone is required to buy automobile insurance. So there's no adverse selection. Everyone has to buy the insurance. So it's not just the high-risk drivers that buy the insurance. The 2010 Affordable Care Act does the same thing in the healthcare industry. It essentially requires everyone to buy health insurance so that there's no more adverse selection. There's no more purchasing of insurance only by sick people. Everyone is required to buy insurance or else pay a fee, and this eliminates the problems associated with adverse selection.